Good afternoon. Stephen Elliott, Coherent Breathing. It's June 28th, 2025. Today, I'd like to speak to a fundamental principle of coherent breathing, this being principle number 5, the fact that breathing is a circulatory function. Many of you have heard this before, probably. But I have found that even those that have heard me say it and heard me explain it are still puzzled by this statement. The reality is that inside the body, we have multiple pumping mechanisms that the role of which is to move blood in the body. The general take and understanding of the circulation in the human body is that it is the role of the heart to move the blood in the body, i.e. the heart is responsible for circulation. But in fact, we have a large secondary or maybe even primary pump that exists, that being what I have termed the thoracic pump. The thoracic pump consists of the lungs and thoracic cavity, which is sealed, bounded on all sides, and at the floor with bounded by the diaphragm. The rib cage and intercostals, etc. The only entrance into the thoracic cavity is that through which blood flows and through which air flows, the conductive airways leading from the nose and mouth down the throat and into the lungs. So in keeping with physics, we know that when we expand the area of a sealed chamber, the pressure in that chamber becomes more negative. And as we shrink the area of the sealed cavity, the pressure in that cavity becomes more positive. This is the general basis on which all pumps work, including the thoracic pump. The mechanism that powers the thoracic pump is principally the diaphragm, which is moving up and down, causing the area in the thoracic cavity to become larger when we inhale and smaller when we exhale. Now, we're all familiar with the fact that breathing moves air in and out of the body. We learn this at a very young age, but even so, most, including the medical industrial complex, does not recognize or is not aware of the fact that breathing is also a major contributor to circulation via the fact that we have this thoracic cavity becoming more negative when we inhale blood flowing from the venous tree through the right heart, filling the lungs with blood during inhalation. And then as we reverse our breathing and exhale, the thoracic cavity becomes smaller. The lungs shrink due to their own elasticity, and the blood contained in the lungs, which was brought there during inhalation to meet with the incoming air across the alveolar surface of the lungs. Microscopic circulatory components of the lung that allow blood and air to meet and to exchange. This is oxygen for carbon dioxide. We're all very familiar with this idea, but the idea that breathing, like that, just drew a large volume of blood from my extremities all over my body, really my entire capillary circulation, into my venous tree, through my right heart, into my lungs. The deeper that I inhale, the larger the volume of blood that moves into my lungs during my inhalation. And consequently, the greater or the further my exhalation proceeds, the greater volume of blood will be ejected from my lungs through my left heart and out into my arterial tree, once again to the pervasive capillary circulation of the body. Now, this is critical because without breathing, the blood in the body fails to move as it can and as it should. And along with the blood in the body, which is nominally thought to be 5 liters of blood volume, the total fluid volume in the average adult body being 42 liters, it is the job of the 5 liters to keep the remaining 37 liters of fluid in the average adult body refreshed, nourished, cleansed, hydrated, etc. Now, if we just breathe in the manner of the average adult, 17 to 19 breaths per minute, our thoracic pump is barely working. In fact, if you observe it instrumentally, you can't see it working often. It appears as a flat line. But once we get the diaphragm moving with range, and especially with rhythmicity, and especially in a resonant manner, then we maximize the amount of blood that returns to our lungs during inhalation and is ejected from our lungs during exhalation, thereby aiding the heart in the greater job of facilitating circulatory health throughout the body, including the brain. Remember that when blood flows through the left heart, it branches into the descending aorta and the ascending aorta. The ascending aorta branching into the carotid arteries, which enter and nourish the brain. So in fact, when we are breathing resonantly, coherently, we have a wave of blood that washes through the brain with each breath, nourishing the brain, cleansing the brain, energizing the brain. When we watch the EEG of the brain during coherent breathing, this is an EEG without low frequency filtering, where you can see the explosion of energy that occurs in the brain cells as a consequence of a wave of oxygenated blood arriving in the brain each time we exhale. You can see this large coming and going of electrical waves in the brain as a consequence of the wave arriving in the brain. You may know that I've termed this wave the Valsalva wave. There'll be more to come on that later in the series. But I hope you'll take this away. This is one of the fundamental reasons that exercise, given that one is capable of exercising, augments all health conditions, including our status quo health condition. in that we can elevate our status quo health condition by breathing well. Why? Because it facilitates a more healthful internal environment. Our interior or milieu interior, you may have heard me write or say. That's not my term, but I've adopted it. So please bear that in mind when you think of coherent breathing now and into the future. What we're doing is facilitating blood and fluid flow throughout the body. With each inhalation and exhalation. The timing of coherent breathing is defined to maximize this outcome. So with that, I'll leave you for today and ask you to bear this in mind as you go about the next week. Thank you, and I hope to see you again next weekend.